So Finland's president does not walk into a public interview and name Canada as part of Europe's long-term future unless something very serious is already moving underneath the surface. This is not a courtesy. This is a strategic signal. And today, we're going to show you exactly what it means.
And just to be clear, the headline here is not Canada joins the EU next Tuesday. That's not what's happening right now. But the headline is that serious European leaders are now talking about Canada as if it already belongs in their strategic family. While the United States under Trump is being treated as the unstable variable they are now actively planning around.
So Finland's president, Alexander Stubb, said that he can envision a much larger European Union and that Canada's values and overall disposition are very close to Europe's. He also said that he and Mark Carney exchanged messages almost every day. So that's not casual diplomacy. That's two heads of state actively coordinating and making sure the world knows it.
So today, we're talking about what was actually signed, why Finland specifically is the right country to be saying this, what Trump's strategy has actually produced, and why the architecture being built between Canada and Europe right now cannot be reversed.
So let's start with the substance of the visit. During Stubb's time in Ottawa, Canada and Finland signed a General Security of Information Agreement. They welcomed a new Maritime Capabilities Memorandum. They committed to expanded Arctic science and maritime security cooperation, and they signed a joint statement on sovereign technology and artificial intelligence.
Okay, that's a lot, so let's break all of that down. A General Security of Information Agreement means these two countries are building the infrastructure to share classified intelligence and allow their defense industries to work on sensitive joint contracts.
The maritime deal is about shipbuilding, Arctic logistics, ports, and ice-capable vessels. And the Sovereign Technology Agreement on AI means that both countries are choosing to develop and govern these systems together, not separately and not waiting for Washington to set the standard.
And then there's the daily texting between Stubb and Carney. Now, that doesn't happen at that level unless there's real alignment behind the scenes. These two aren't just staying in touch, they're actually working in sync.
And all of these announcements aren't just photo ops or fun games of hockey, although that was fun to see them play together. These are specific building blocks of a deeper strategic relationship, signed, dated, and already operational.
And it matters enormously who Finland is in this conversation, because Finland isn't just any European country here. Finland shares an 800-kilometer border with Russia. They joined NATO in 2023 after Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. So this is a country that thinks about security because the danger for them isn't theoretical, it is geographical.
So when Finland looks at Canada and says, hey, these are our people, well, that's not a sentimental statement at all. That is a hard security judgment. Finland's not looking for a symbolic friend. They're identifying a reliable partner for exactly the kind of world that they're preparing for.
And Stubb has been one of the most direct European leaders on where the order is heading. He has said plainly that a more European NATO is taking shape and that Europe is shouldering more of its own responsibility.
And when he places Canada inside that picture publicly, well, he's not just floating some sort of idea here. He's actually telling you the conversation among serious leaders, it's already happened.
And here is what Trump's approach has actually produced. He wanted compliance. Well, he got contingency planning. He wanted leverage. Well, he got diversification. He wanted deference. He got countries building alternative architecture at speed instead.
Yeah, that was definitely not the negotiating outcome he was hoping for. It was cause and effect. And Carney has described the weaponization of trade as a rupture in the global order. And Stubb has said that the order is clearly changing. Two different leaders, different language, but the exact same conclusion. Europe is building more of its own defense capacity, Canada is broadening trade and strategic ties, and the Nordics are knitting closer with Canada.
It's basic risk management. And every time Trump applies pressure to Canada, Canada's value in Europe's strategic calculations, well, that goes up. Because what Europe is looking for right now is stability, predictability, democratic reliability. And Canada, we've been delivering all three.
So let's be specific here about what's actually being built, because there's an enormous amount of territory between regular ally and formal EU member, and that is exactly where the real work is happening.
Well, Canada is already signed into Europe's defense program. That is the €150 billion joint procurement initiative, and it's Europe's largest defense buildup since the Cold War.
Yeah, it's safe. We've talked about this before. Security action for Europe, and it's a key pillar of the EU's Readiness 2030 plan. Now, for Canada and the EU member states who are NATO allies, it will help deliver on defense capability targets more quickly and economically.
Canada is the only non-EU nation that is part of that alliance, and that means that Canadian defense manufacturers, shipbuilders, and aerospace companies can bid on and win contracts inside that system.
It's Canadian companies becoming part of Europe's long-term defense supply chain, building the equipment Europe and Canada will rely on for decades.
So that is Canada being a part of the structural industrial role in Europe's rearmament.
And the Icebreaker collaboration effort links Canada and Finland specifically on the Arctic and polar vessel design and production, building serious shared industrial capacity in one of the most strategically important regions on the planet.
Now, add the agreements from this visit on top of that. Well, these are not designed around one administration's preference. They are built to outlast any particular political moment in Washington.
Those institutions do not disappear when a new president is elected. The political conditions that created them may shift, but the institutions themselves are designed to endure those shifts.
So the bigger frame here is something that Stubbs said directly to Ottawa. Smaller countries have agency if they choose to take it. If the order is changing, they should help shape what comes next rather than wait to see where they land.
That is a clean summary of what Carney has been executing. Canada is not reacting to Trump's agenda. Canada is building its own. And the countries we're building with are nations that have collectively decided that, hey, European security can no longer depend on American reliability as its organizing principle.
Hey, it's not anti-American, but post-American in the specific sense that decisions no longer start with, well, what does Washington want? They start with, how do we stay secure if Washington is unpredictable?
We're seeing middle powers now act like middle powers. Canada and Finland are not trying to dominate the world. They're connecting with other stable democracies to make themselves harder to isolate. And that is the serious version of sovereignty. Not standing alone, but building enough reliable relationships that no one can push you around without cost. And listen, Canada fits into that European conversation surprisingly well. We're an Atlantic country, already bordering two European nations, Greenland and France. We're an Arctic country, a G7 country, a founding NATO member, and a democracy with regulatory instincts that are often closer to Europe than the US. We like rules, institutions, healthcare, and not turning every trade dispute into a power play. All of this aligns more closely with Europe right now than with the current direction of the US policy, that's for sure.
So when Europe identifies stable, reliable, democratic partners to build with, Canada is not a surprising choice. We are the logical choice. And the irony at the center of this entire foreign policy approach is that Trump has accelerated every development he was trying to prevent. He wanted dependent allies, he got independent ones. He wanted to keep Canada firmly inside Washington's orbit, while he pushed Canada closer to Europe on Canada's own terms. France has already said it, and the EU didn't laugh, they applauded. Now Finland is bringing it home.
So from interesting to practical to permanent, we are watching that sequence happen in real time.
Once something sounded absurd, then when you say it enough, it starts to sound logical. And Canada, we're starting to sound like a logical part of the EU.
So the real meaning of Stubbs' comment isn't legal, it's strategic. Europe is starting to treat Canada less like an outside partner and more like part of the same democratic group. That doesn't turn into a treaty overnight, we all know that. But it does change how deals get made, how defense is coordinated, and how future plans are being shaped.
And once that shift happens in how leaders think, policy usually follows.
So here's a question for you today. If Canada keeps moving closer to Europe like this, does that change our relationship with the US for good? And is that something that Canadians should actually want? Drop your thoughts below because we want to hear from you. We love reading your comments.
And before we go, if you're getting value out of this kind of breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss what's coming next.
And don't forget to check out the pinned comment and the description because that's where we've got the deeper dives on Substack, our Facebook group, and the A-Team if you want to be part of the community.
Thanks for watching, everybody, and we shall see you tomorrow.
Ciao for now.